Once upon a time, in the city of Fiercetopia lived a husband and a wife named Mr. and Mrs. Golds. In a three-bedroom house, who had been wishing and trying for a child for years and years, but very unsuccessful. At last, the wife had hopes that God would send her a sign, a message, something, and fulfill her great wish. In the family room, they had a bay window, and from it they were able to look out to an impressive garden full of most exquisite flowers, vegetables, and herbs. But it was surrounded by a privacy fence and cameras. No one dared to enter it because it belonged to a millionairess who had great powers and was feared by the whole city, living in her big gates. One day, Mr. Golds had just gotten home, and Miss Golds had just gotten home as well. She was a botanist at Fierce University Local College. She was tired, so she decided to go look out and start staring down into the millionaire's exquisite garden where she noticed it. A bed of planted flowers with the most beautiful and rare jade vine flowers, and next to it, she seen it. She seen the most divine thing, the Rapunzel flower. And they looked so fresh and green, and she began to obsess after them. See, she had been studying them at work for the past few weeks for a very long time, and they had become an object of her affection. She wanted to know everything about them. She had never yet touched one, and she thought of seeing the Rapunzels up close. It was just eating her away. She had to have one. She had to see one up close and personal. Every day, her curiosity grew, and she knew that she couldn't have any of them. She grew thin, becoming sick because her obsession grew more and more and was the only thing she focused on. Her husband, Mr. Golds, was worried about her and her condition and asked, "What's the matter, honey?" "Oh, me," she answered. "Well, I'm working on a big project for work and it's stressing me out. I have to find the Rapunzel flower or my boss will have my head. The crazy thing is that I found some crazy... I found some, and the crazy thing is it's only next door in the garden behind our house. If I can give them, I'll lose my job." Her husband, Mr. Gold, who loved her and understood the dire need of doing things for work, since he was a contract carpenter, thought, rather than let his wife get fired and lose her job, he would go over there and get some of the Rapunzels for her, no matter the cost, whatever it may be. So that night after dinner, he told his wife, Miss Golds, he left some more important papers at work in the office, and he had to go back and get them. So he sneaked over and out, and he sneaked over in the moonlight, and he climbed over the privacy fence into the millionaire's garden. He impulsively dug up a handful of Rapunzels with his bare hands and took them back to his wife. Immediately, she made a vase of water for the Rapunzels. Her husband brought home. She took out her phone to take some pictures so she could forever enjoy and cherish the moment. She took the vase and ran off to her private office so she could admire them in peace and private. Rushing off, not even saying thank you to her husband, Mr. Gold, and him not even knowing they were all for his Mrs. Gold's personal gain. But little did he know, she enjoyed them so very, very much. The next day, her curiosity was 3 times as great. The 4 Rapunzels was not enough if she was to be at peace. Her husband, Mr. Gold, had to climb into that garden once again. So once again, after dinner, he left and he climbed over the privacy fence again, but he had to ascend down the wall. He was tremendously frightened, for he saw the millionaire standing before him. "How do you dare steal from me?" she said with an angry look. "To climb into my garden and steal my Rapunzels like a thief in the night? Night after night?" Little did he know she had cameras everywhere and she had been watching him steal from her garden. "It will cost you, my dear," stayed the millionaires. "Oh, please, it's just flowers," Mr. Gold answered. Please have mercy on me. See, my wife saw your Rapunzels from the window, and she's working on a massive project at work, and she's been looking for them everywhere, and your garden was the only place we could find them. If she does not have them, she will get fired, and we just can't afford that." After hearing that, the millionaire's anger decreased, and she said to him, "If it is as you say, I will permit you to take as many Rapunzels as you wish. But I shall make one condition. You must let me adopt the child your wife will bring into the world. All shall go well with the child, and I will care for the child like it was my own and I was its mother." In his fear, Mr. Golds agreed to everything and left with a lot of Rapunzel's flowers in hand because he knew it was not a good idea to be on the bad side of the millionaires. So just as the millionaire said, Mrs. Golds got pregnant with a baby girl. When it was time came, the millionaire appeared right away, named the child Rapunzel, and took her away far. Rapunzel was the most beautiful child under the sun. She was full of life and wonder. She had the millionaire's wrapped around her finger. They lived together in a beachfront condo until she was a little older. When she was 12 years old, the millionaires locked her in a tower that was turned into a one-unit apartment in the middle of the forest that had neither stair nor door. There was a balcony that looked out on the forest, a bedroom, a bathroom, a kitchen, and a desk with a laptop computer. When the millionaires wanted to get in, she would stand below and call, "Rapunzel! Rapunzel! Let down your long golden hair!" Rapunzel had beautiful long hair, as fine as spun gold. She loved her hair so much she wanted to change her name just to Gold in honor of her beautiful golden locks. Usually Rapunzel's only way to reach the world and her mother was through her laptop computer. It was her getaway to the world she could not experience. She would write her mother in private messages on Twitter to send her important messages for her to bring things to the tower apartment. She would check and see what her mother had been up to throughout the day. She also liked posting images to Instagram. She loved pictures because they told such a great story. So she lived through the posting pictures to her Instagram. That meant so much to her. Her blog was the most important thing. See, she used the blog to post things she thought were cool and creative and some of her personal thoughts through the posts, and she also would find fashion ideas and fun DIY projects, which is do it yourself, and she also would find things to do with her long, beautiful hair. She wanted to share herself with the world, so she thought this was the best way. And since she couldn't be out in it, and this was her favorite way to do it, she tried to do it a lot. Today, she had been updating Twitter and writing a blog post about how to get that long golden hair when she heard the millionaire's voice. She stopped and logged out of her blog because she didn't want the millionaires to know anything about it and got up from her computer. She would go to the balcony, undo her braids, wrap them around the railing, and then her hair would fall 20 feet or so, far below the ground, and the millionaires would climb up with a great agility. After a few years of this, Rapunzel had got used to living in the tower apartment. One day it happened. The governor's son, Mr. Prince, was taking a hike through the forest and came past the tower. Then he heard a familiar song he was just listening to on the radio before going for the hike. It was a really great song. He stopped and listened, but he realized that's not all that he was hearing. There was a beautiful voice that was singing along to the song. Little did he know, it was Rapunzel and her laptop. She was listening to a radio stream and was cleaning the tower apartment. She passed time in her loneliness by letting sweet music ring out at full blast and singing along with her angelic voice. The governor's son, Mr. Prince, wanted to climb up to the sound and look for a door in the tower, but there was none to be found. He went ahead and hiked home, but the singing touched his heart so deeply that he went out into the forest every day and listened to it. Once when he was standing behind a tree listening, he saw a beautiful woman approach, and it was the millionaire's. He had heard her. She called up and said, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your long golden hair." Then Rapunzel let down her locks, and the millionaires climbed up to her. "If that's the ladder to climb, I'll try my luck," thought Mr. Prince, the governor's son. And the next day, as it was getting to grow dark, he went up to the tower and called, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your long golden hair." And at once, her hair fell down, and the governor's son, Mr. Prince, climbed up. See, at first, Rapunzel was terrified and scared. Oh, she was terribly scared when a man came into her tower apartment, for she had never set eyes on one before. But the governor's son, Mr. Prince, began speaking very kindly to her and told her that his heart had been so deeply moved by her singing that it gave him no peace, and he had to see for himself. He said, "Believe it or not, it was love at first sight." And Rapunzel smiled. So he went on to introduce himself, and she told them that her name was Rapunzel, but she would prefer if he just called her Gold, since that she felt better suited her. And he agreed Gold would be what he called her. They went on to talk the night away, but by the end of the night, Rapunzel lost her fear, and the next morning when he asked her if she would take him as her husband and let him have her hand in marriage, and she saw that he was young and handsome and serious, she thought, "He'll love me more than the old millionaire is," and said yes, and decided they would leave that night. She put her hand in his. She said, "I gladly go with you, but I don't know how I'll be able to get down." So she thought, and he thought, and told Mr. Prince, "Each time you come, bring me a foot of rope with you. I'll weave a ladder with it, and then when it's finished, I'll climb down and you shall take me away." They arranged that until then he should come to her every evening after the millionaires came during the day. Rapunzel was infatuated with him so much she followed him on Twitter so they could talk when they were not together, as well as wrote about him in her blog and posted pics of him on her Instagram. And the millionaires didn't notice anything until one day Rapunzel started to say to her, "Tell me, millionaires, how is it that you are so much heavier to draw up than the young Mr. Prince, the governor's son, who only takes half the time you take to reach me?" The millionaires was surprised and said, "Oh, you simple-minded child," cried the millionaires. "What's this I hear? I thought I had kept you apart from the world, Rapunzel, and even so you have deceived me? Don't call me Rapunzel. I want to be called Gold," Rapunzel said. And in her rage, the millionaires grabbed Rapunzel's beautiful golden locks, wound it a few times around her left hand, seized a pair of scissors with her right, and snip, snap, cut! The hair was off, and the beautiful locks fell and laid on the ground. The millionaire said, "How's that for calling you Gold?" But that wasn't not it. She took a rope out of her bag and made Rapunzel climb down to the ground. The millionaires was so pitiless that she brought poor Rapunzel to an empty warehouse where she had to live in great sorrow and misery. But on the same day she had cast Rapunzel out, that evening the millionaires returned to the tower apartment and attached the golden lock she had cut off Rapunzel's to the balcony railing. And when the governor's son, Mr. Prince, came and called, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your long golden hair," the millionaires let Rapunzel's hair down all right. The governor's son, Mr. Prince, climbed up, but at the top he did not find his dearest beautiful Rapunzel, or as he called her, Gold. But instead he found the millionaires, who looked at him with a wicked and venomous eye. "Aha!" she cried scornfully. "You want to fetch your lady love, but the pretty bird is no longer sitting and singing in her nest. The cat has got her, and will scratch your eyes out too. Your Rapunzel is lost to you, and you will never see her again." Little did most people know that the millionaire was a secret enchantress. She had cast a spell on him. The governor's son, Mr. Prince, was beside himself with grief and his despair, and he ran to the balcony, grabbed the golden locks, and leaped down from the tower. He managed to escape with his life, but he fell into thorns, and they pierced his eyes. As he strayed blindly in the forest, all he ate was roots and berries and leaves. All he did was weep and grieve and cry over the loss of his dearest fiancée, Gold, his long-lost Rapunzel. And so he wandered about in misery for several years, and at last he came up to the warehouse where Rapunzel was living, wretched and exiled. He heard a voice, and it seemed so familiar to him. So he made his way towards it, and as he approached, Rapunzel recognized him and flung her arms round his neck and wept. She was so happy. But two of her tears fell upon his eyes, and then they grew clear again, and he could see with them as he had always done. He looked at her with the biggest smile, and he said, "Hi, my gold. You're the best treasure a man could find, an even better sight for sore eyes." He led them out the warehouse and brought him and her back to the governor's mansion, where he was welcomed with joy by his family. And him and Gold lived long and happily together, never thinking about the millionaires again, and forever forgetting the name Rapunzel.